Great. Good afternoon. I'm Brooke Learman, State Comptroller, and for purposes of this meeting, the Chair of the Maryland Community Investment Corporation Board of Directors. Great to be with you all today on a rainy Monday afternoon. We have a few things to get through today. First, I want to welcome Secretary Coker for his first meeting. So delighted to have you on. Welcome. We're really excited about this organization and the team that is on board. So it's great to have you. Next, I want to move to our meeting minutes from January. So meeting minutes are at the end of the board packet. So each board member received it on Friday afternoon. Sorry, it was a little late, my fault. I forgot to respond to Michael's email to say that he was
that's on me.
send it out. My fault. But hopefully you had a chance to look at them. I thought they looked fine. And so we need to adopt those. Can I have a motion to adopt the meeting minutes from January 27th?
I move that we adopt the meeting minutes from January 27th as written.
Thank you. Already jumping in. You're going to be a great board member, I can tell. Is there a second?
Second.
Great, thanks. All those in favor of approving the meeting minutes signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, meeting minutes are adopted. So I'm going to turn it over to Michael. He has a short PowerPoint that he's going to walk us through. And then after that, we're going to hear from James Simmons with SB Friedman, who has a proposal in sort of including a scope of work, fees, et cetera, that they'll be engaging with us on. So Michael, great to see you. I know you're going to introduce our amazing new team member, and thanks for pulling us together today.
Yeah, great. Thank you. I will share my screen. All right. It looks like it's the PowerPoint, but you'll be able to see it. All right. So we did the minutes. Thank you, Comptroller. I wanted to take a minute because we had talked about it at our last session, and we've actually completed this process now. We have hired Crystal Okafor, who can spend maybe a minute introducing herself, but she comes to us from the Department of Housing and Community Development's Just Communities program. She is our managing director now and will be leading both our statewide community advisory activity and statewide strategic planning processes, as well as supporting me and the whole team, and ultimately the staff that we hire underneath her as we set up our lending programs and other activities. So Crystal's been a great hire. This is her third or fourth week already, and she hasn't run screaming for the hills. So very pleased to have her. And Crystal, if you want to take just a second and introduce yourself.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Michael. It's great to be here. Crystal Okafor, pronounce she, her, hers. I'm very excited to join MCIC as the managing director. I think our scope of work is very exciting, and I look forward to stewarding this important work for the people of Maryland.
Great. Thank you.
Welcome, Crystal. Great to have you on.
And thank you to Secretary Day for allowing Crystal to come join our team and stay in the family, as it were, but really appreciated that. Thank you.
We couldn't be more happy and supportive.
So as part of that work, I just wanted to update what we are going to be broadening the scope of our community advisory board. As you recall, at the end of last year, we had to adopt a sort of minimally sufficient community advisory board to get certified as a CDE, because we were still pursuing and still will be pursuing new markets applications at that time. But it was not a broad process. And so we have a community advisory board now, but we want to establish a broader one. And to that end, Crystal is already managing an open invitation email address, which is up on the screen now, communityadvisory@marylandcommunityinvestment.com. And so if you have your networks or you want to publish that or refer anybody to us, we already have the lists of folks that were recommended in the last go round in the fall. So the Comptroller and Secretary Day and others had submitted some names. And so we have those names, and we'll be reaching back out to folks to broaden the scope of that community advisory. One of the things that SB Friedman's work will help us do is understand the regional differences in Maryland in the kinds of work that we'll be doing in different places. And so without having gone to the board for a formal motion, one of our suggestions is going to be that we establish essentially regional community advisory boards, which will really allow us to bring more people into the tent here and more authentically engage each individual community or region of communities with the needs and tools that best serve them. So hopefully that will come to some good end as we move through the process here in the next little while.
I just have
I know that we
one,
talked about, sorry,
sorry,
Councilwoman.
Michael, I just have like one super random comment, which is just to be careful about how many email addresses you guys end up creating. Like, might just want to have info at some point, because
Yeah.
you want to start having to negotiate a whole bunch of different ones and then they go
So-
back, you know.
I appreciate it. Ironically, we do have info at already. So
I figured.
we'll burn that bridge when we come to it. But no, that's good advice because I know that we will lose track of it. So I did send up an email late last or the week before now. Time has no meaning at these current moments, but the last Trump administration executive order about the CDFI fund, and there was some back and forth with you all about that. And I did send an update on that. There has not been a ton of new motion. The Secretary of the Treasury, the Trump appointee, has issued a support statement in favor of the CDFI fund. So we're optimistic as an industry that no harm will come to the fund overall. It has strong statutory authority. The New Markets program in and of itself will still have to get authorized for additional funding in the coming Congress. That everybody seems to think is a strong probability of happening and did happen every year that Trump was president in the prior administration. So, you know, notwithstanding that things are different now, the hope is that that will continue. So there's no new news, but everything seems to be going in the right direction, notwithstanding the sort of chaos at the moment. There is an update on branding. I know we had talked about this in prior sessions. This is the logo that we have settled on with the executive committee of the board and myself and Crystal and the consultant. It has several nice features, we think. It looks like a house. It looks like the letter M. It doesn't look too much like the McCormick logo or anything else. It is not red, black, and yellow. It does adopt the governor's yellow and blue turning the key palette. And so we are developing with Mabane Design the full package of letterheads and other things that would go along with this. And happy to have commentary about it, but I am not a designer, and we've sort of settled on this as I hesitate to say good enough because that understates how critical this branding work can be, but we do need to move on to getting a web page and all of that good stuff set up. So this is where we are, and in the absence of commentary, I think we'll move on. With that, I wanted to give the floor back to SB Friedman, who you may recall presented at our very first board meeting. Secretary Coker will not recall, but we had our very first board meeting in July of last year. I had not even been hired at that point, but the team from SB Friedman, who is a nationally recognized and industry leading consultant group in the new market space, presented a little bit about New Markets 101 and the history of new markets in Maryland. And after a strategic planning, scoping exercise and review process with them and some other consultants, we have selected them to provide strategic planning advisory services to MCIC for the next 6 to 9 months. And I wanted to let James and his colleague Lance introduce themselves to the board and talk a little bit about what their process is going to be like, and then briefly have an opportunity for questions from you all. Excuse me. I want to try to limit that whole period to about a half hour because I know Secretary Day has some walk-on agenda items that we want to have some time for discussion here at the end of the planned agenda. So with that, I will stop sharing screen and yield the floor to James and Lance.
Thanks, Michael. Hi, everyone. Good to see you again. Really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today. As Michael alluded to, I did have the opportunity to kind of do an introductory session on new markets tax credits. It was on the 3rd of July last year, so you'll all be forgiven if you have no memory of any of that content at this point. But just a quick reminder of sort of who we are. As Michael mentioned, we do have a good deal of experience and expertise in the new markets industry. The program itself was first founded back in 2000. The first awards were announced from the Treasury Department in 2002. We started working with our first CDE client in 2005 and helped them win their first award in 2006. So we've been working in the industry for a solid 20 years at this point. Almost as long as the program's really truly been active. In that time, we've helped win over 30 new markets awards for our CDE clients, totaling over 1.6 billion in new markets allocation. We've also helped close either on behalf of CDE clients or borrower clients that are seeking new markets financing, over 200 transactions, including over 3 billion in new markets allocation. So really do bring a good wealth of experience in this relatively niche industry. I personally wrote my master's thesis on new markets tax credits in the early years of the program, and have been working in the industry in earnest since about 2011. First at SB Friedman in a role similar to the role I'm in now. Spent a bit of time working for JP Morgan Chase doing new markets tax credit originations work, and have now been back at SB Friedman for about 2 years, consulting with CDEs and borrowers. So hopefully that's just a helpful kind of reminder of kind of how we approach this work. We do bring a lot of new markets experience. That's not all we bring. We are a full service real estate advisory firm based in Chicago. And it's with that in mind that I want to introduce my colleague Lance Dorn, who can talk a little bit more about our non-new markets work at SB Friedman.
Great, thank you, James. And can you all hear me okay? Okay, I'm traveling, so if you have any issues with my audio, just give me a heads up. First of all, just want to thank you all for having me. My name is Lance Dorn. I am a partner with SB Friedman. I'm also a former Maryland resident and a proud alum of UMD, so very excited to be working with you all on this. Go Terps.
What a game. Oh my gosh. So exciting. I was at the women's game on Saturday, which was also exciting, but woohoo.
Terps, I love it.
Yep.
So yeah, as James mentioned, he's part of a team that focuses almost exclusively on new markets tax credits. The other practice area within our firm more broadly provides real estate, community development, and economic development advisory services. And we do provide those services primarily to the public sector, foundational clients, institutions, and nonprofits. Within that space, we specialize in real estate economics. So think about demographic, socioeconomic research, market analysis, financial feasibility work. We also have a focus on public-private partnership finance. So thinking about the tools that extend beyond new markets tax credits. We're well-versed in things like tax increment finance and property tax abatements and different tools that local and state jurisdictions have at their disposal to support economic development and community development within their communities. We also frequently work on the implementation side of planning. So we have really strong quantitative and qualitative research capabilities, but then really are involved in the nuts and bolts of implementation. So we're bringing together our two practice areas on this assignment and excited to do that.
Absolutely.
Can you
Michael,
talk a little bit about your process with the board from here on in terms of engagement and interviews and things like that?
Absolutely. Yep. So I think Lance and I have both been really encouraged by the guidance from Michael and from Crystal thus far, and sort of what they hope to see out of the strategic planning process on behalf of MCIC. Certainly, there's a clear focus on making sure that the strategic plan for the organization is sort of rooted in data, but also very meaningfully informed by community input. And so really our goal with this process is to leverage existing knowledge and resources that are available from the state of Maryland, but really help focus that information on the needs of low-income communities as defined by the New Markets Tax Credit Program in the state. Working with all of you to sort of collect and synthesize existing information, add some additional data analysis on our end, and use that to inform a meaningful community outreach process that will involve interviews with key stakeholders, as well as at least a few broader community meetings where we're really trying to make sure that we're getting input from local residents on the needs of their communities and how MCIC might best address those needs. So on my end, I'd really see this as we do a lot of work with CDE, new markets tax credit applications, obviously, and a lot of this work will be rooted in what's necessary from a competitive standpoint for a CDE. But I really see this as a great opportunity to really inform that sort of very intentionally through the strategic planning process. So there are a few things that I think we're looking forward to engaging with the board on more directly as we work through that process in the coming months. A few aspects of our scope of work that I'll highlight are, again, really just getting direct input from you all on what you might see as needs facing Maryland's low-income communities and how MCIC might address those, helping inform the community engagement strategy more broadly. So to the extent that there are key stakeholders, organizations that you think would be relevant to talk to as we're working through the strategic planning process, want to make sure that we're collecting those suggestions from you. And then one piece that we're trying to be really focused on as we're going through this work is understanding that MCIC and new markets tax credits do not exist in a vacuum, that there are a whole host of programs and resources available to support investments in low-income communities. And so one of the things that we'd like to work with you all on is kind of understanding other financing tools, technical assistance tools that are available through different parts of state agencies, and look at that together with MCIC's mission and focus to make sure that we're thinking about that comprehensively in the context of the strategic plan.
Can I interrupt you for 1 second?
Please.
So I think Secretary Coker and Secretary Day will be really important leads in that research and work to make sure that we have sort of a full understanding of all the different tools in the tool chest, and can make sure that we're bringing those to bear and when we're working with folks. So just wanted to note that.
Absolutely. Definitely look forward to those conversations.
Just for the board's benefit, one of the things that James and I and Crystal have already spoken about is the desire to have the report that SB Friedman's contracted to produce become part of the material that goes into our MCIC annual presentation of sort of the state of the state in terms of data, and then also the sort of what we've accomplished and how we can talk about the successes that MCIC has had over that period of time. So this is a first year's engagement that is critically part of producing a strategic plan as required by the statute, but is also, in my mind, part of level setting and baseline development so that we can begin to articulate over time the impacts that MCIC has had across the state, across a range of different kinds of activities, both, frankly, new markets and non-new markets focused. Though, as James points out, part of our directive and really the value add for Friedman to us is that all of this work will be done through the lens of what is it that would make MCIC the most competitive new markets applicant, or help us develop programs and policies and practices that would help make Maryland as a whole more competitive as a target for allocation for other investors and other CDEs in the industry generally. So I think that's really part of our charge here, is to baseline and then also to figure out through them what are the approaches that will help make Maryland as a whole a more competitive state for new markets allocation generally. Are there questions from the board for James or Lance? We have them for a little more time, 10 more minutes or so, and I would love to make sure that you all have a chance to interact as you get ready for things like interviews and such. Secretary Day?
So maybe this is premature, but I assume in planning our strategic planning engagement, there will be some times when we can get together in a room. I know we've got a Meetings Act to think about and all of that, but can we all gather together? Is that possible as a step in the process, or was that envisioned as part of the process?
It is envisioned, and I think it is possible. Certainly one way to do it would be to meet with only 3 of you at a time, and that's less effective. But I think that if we commit to making those meetings non-decisional, we may be able to get them sort of, as retreats or working sessions that we're not taking any actions in those meetings.
Okay.
But the intention is for sure to have an in-person meeting. And in fact, we had been planning to have one. The cadence of hiring SB Friedman on board was such that we had to turn that into our last executive session, as you recall, but we do intend to have real in-person meetings.
Okay. Thanks.
Colin, I know you're representing Secretary Flora, but wanted to highlight that the planning department's data will be critically important as well.
Yeah. And I think we had tried to plan something in person,
We had.
but then like session got in the way. So we'll try again for the spring. Maybe we can look to like May or June.
Yep.
And try to find a date before everybody goes away on vacation.
Yeah, for sure. I
Um,
appreciate that. Okay, well,
I have
sorry.
one more question.
Yeah.
Could you talk a little bit about who you like, the kind of work you've done for other clients in this space?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as I alluded to, I think for all of our CDE clients, when we're working on new markets tax credit applications, there's definitely a very significant component of those applications that are focused on the investment strategy of the CDE and how it's informed by community needs. So I will say that's often something that we're sort of layering on to an organization's existing work in a way that's a little bit different than what we're doing here. So one of the things that I'm really excited about is the opportunity to sort of build up that strategy with new markets more specifically in mind, which is not always an opportunity we have with CDE clients. So our experience has been more perhaps adding that on the back end for the purposes of applying for new markets allocation. And this will just be more sort of intentional upfront.
Okay. Got it. Where are you guys
And
based?
Chicago.
Okay.
And Lance, maybe you can talk a little bit about kind of your experience with more strategic planning work on behalf of clients as well outside of the new market space.
Sure. And as I alluded to at the beginning, we do provide a pretty wide range of services within that real estate economics and public-private partnership finance space. We like to say that we are involved all the way from the visioning through to actual economic development deals. So working on specific projects and helping our clients actually put shovels in the dirt. In terms of strategic planning and implementation related work, we've been involved with a variety of different things. I've helped create a mezzanine loan fund to support naturally occurring affordable housing projects. We have currently working on with a municipality on program design and implementation focused on renovating upper story commercial buildings for housing uses. And a variety of different things in the housing and the economic development space. Our research capabilities, we think, are very strong. We have very deep expertise in geographic information systems, and we are constantly leveraging new data sources to really dig in and understand what a community's unmet needs are. We look at it from the perspective of housing, commercial services, social services, and are able to articulate that in really straightforward ways that our clients can then make decisions based on the analytical work that we've produced. Our community engagement, we have a variety of different community engagement techniques. The intent here is to have direct conversations with folks and to have one-on-one interviews and focus groups. But we're also talking with Michael and the team about what that community engagement looks like. So thinking about how to really get folks engaged, get them to show up so that we can collect their feedback. So kind of a wide range of things, but happy to answer any more specific questions to that regard.
We do intend to bring on a local consultant who will help us actually organize and manage those in-person larger group sessions to the extent that we plan some, partly because the team, the SB Friedman team is based in Chicago, but partly too because it's important to work with folks who are actually touching those communities in a real way to make sure that those relationships are authentic and that we can get good feedback.
Yep. Great. Thanks.
Great. All right. So that was the SB Friedman team, and thank you, James and Lance. And we'll make sure that the whole board is communicated to about the upcoming meetings and calendars for things like one-on-one sessions and other things. So, and then as we have in progress updates at future board meetings, we'll be sure to share those with the group.
Thank you all. Look forward to talking with you again soon.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So next we're going to add in, sort of on all our meetings going forward, something right before the adjourn. And that is on any other board member business. So this will be a time for board members to sort of bring up, even if it's, just MCIC adjacent work that you're doing, to update all of us on, hey, our agency's doing this initiative or that initiative, just wanted to keep you all informed. That's for all of our benefits and also for Michael's benefits, so that he can hear what your agents, and Crystal, so that they can hear what our agencies are doing and working on. So I just encourage you, we'll always leave for some time for that from now on, and just, it's a time to just sort of share what you're working on. And I do know that Secretary Day has something he wants us to talk about today. Before we get to him, is there anybody else that wants to chime in? I know I'm putting folks on the spot, but if there's other folks who want to chime in on anything, just let us know. I will let folks know I hired our former small business director, Laura Gutierrez, was stolen by Maria Martinez. But we're super happy for her, and also really happy that we recruited Janal Contractor from Howard County to come join us as our small business and community development director. So she's now part of our team. It's Janal, Jinal Contractor. And she's working under Ben Siegel on Ben's team, who's on and always listening in on these meetings as well. But just in case you see Janal's name, that's who she is, and we're excited to have her. Anything anybody wants to share before we turn over to Secretary Day? Okay, Secretary Day, the floor is yours.
Comptroller Learman, thank you. Thanks, everybody. Let me just start off by saying this is coming to you as a less of a prepared item and more of a discussion topic, because it's very, very early stage. But there is some action that DHCD is getting ready to take that will formalize a facet of this. And I think, and we think at DHCD, that there is a real opportunity for MCIC to play a critical role in what I'm going to talk about. And so this is a perfect opportunity to introduce the idea. Let me go back and just say that when Comptroller Learman, as you talked about the value of a CDE to the state of Maryland, in the early days of your tenure, I quickly learned what this entity could bring to the state economically. And yes, most of that has to do with our ability to focus, to concentrate, and to increase our share of winning New Markets Tax Credit awards. But there's other opportunities that are out there, and this is appearing, I think, to be a really powerful entity, and to strengthen our case for future applications for NMTC awards. So the topic at hand is the Reinvest Baltimore initiative, which is intended to address vacant homes in Baltimore City. Obviously, that's just one jurisdiction with an extraordinary challenge, but the scale of that challenge, I think, requires statewide attention. It's why the governor announced the Reinvest Baltimore effort and created, as a part of that, two programs, one of which is the Baltimore Vacancy Reinvestment Council, BVRC, which is a body that I chair, and it's a partnership between the city, the state, as well as philanthropy and the private sector, represented by GBC, as well as the community, represented by a number of folks, including Bill, the faith-based partnership in Baltimore City. The second is BVRI, the Baltimore Vacancy Reinvestment Initiative, which is an expansion and rebranding of what began as Project Core, which is a very demolition-focused fund for concentrating strategic demolition monies into Baltimore City to address the concentration of vacants. So where we find ourselves about 5 months into the meetings of this body is that in a series of conversations, we have run into the recognition that the primary pipeline for addressing vacant properties, acquiring them, and then abating the vacant building notice, the VBN, of which there is just under 13,000, about 12,800 in Baltimore City right now. The primary pipeline for that will be the in-rem foreclosure process. And so in-rem foreclosure is a city action. It requires a lot of legal time and attention, there is now a specific docket, an in-rem docket that a magistrate is assigned to, clerk is assigned to, and then paralegals and lawyers are assigned to from city government to process those in-rem foreclosures. Now, that being said, that pipeline is processing about 20 to 30 properties a month. Not fast enough. It needs more magistrates, it needs more clerks, it needs more paralegals, more lawyers, more time, more attention. And as we widen that aperture, which will take time to execute, there are steps being taken this budget, there will be steps in the future. But as that happens, there is still a need to act quickly, and there are resources available. The General Assembly has passed legislation last year that commits per year $50 million in the BVRI funds. So that's a $50 million a year commitment of resources to address through acquisition, demolition, and stabilization the vacants in the city. Now, a reaction to the slow nature of the in-rem pipeline by some folks has been, well, let's just, the state, you just take it, just take the money, keep the money, you buy the buildings. You know, you'll be much faster than the city. Well, it doesn't quite work like that. And the primary reason it doesn't work like that is we don't have the in-rem foreclosure power. So sure, if we've got the gumption and the energy and enthusiasm and potentially the staffing and expertise to do it, it would take 18 to 24 months to address a single property, whereas it's about 4 months to 5 months in the in-rem foreclosure process. So we're not faster. By the legal parameters set up for us, we're by definition slower. So good intentions might be there, but the execution wouldn't be. So there is, I think, another opportunity to address some of the low-hanging fruit. There is, in the universe of those 12,800 properties, there is a subset of that universe, about 10 to 20%, that are either owned by community development organizations, owned by their developer partners, or are clear acquisition targets for negotiated acquisition, meaning they have a VBN, they are in the geography that makes them eligible for Reinvest Baltimore, and they have changed hands within the last 12 to 18 months, and thus we can probably identify and reach the property owner. So there is this sub-universe of, let's call it low-hanging fruit. We have the resources to make acquisitions, targeted acquisitions, demolitions, and then to begin rehabs, rehabilitations. And those are the two methods through which we could abate a VBN. And we want to bring that 12,800 number down, right? We have targets. And so awarding those dollars directly to the community development partners and saying, in a pay-for-performance model, we are going to, month by month, over the next fiscal year, ask you to take down the properties that you have identified that you are going to acquire. Now, the state plays a critical role here. The state's critical role is we have the money, we have to award it, we have to validate these entities. Well, in our normal April to June state revitalization program award timeline, we can run a parallel process that's specifically focused on this program, that the CDOs that are already eligible because they are Bernie organizations, Baltimore Regional Neighborhood Initiative organizations, they can apply to us with those targeted properties, the things that they own, the things that their developer partners own, and the properties that are recent acquisitions. And we're creating with the city a list of those properties that are to be targeted for acquisition. The next step in the process would be to disperse that money in that pay for performance model. Tell us what you're going to do in July. We'll give you the money, you execute and move on. The timeline for us to process those dollars is usually very, very long. Right now, the way that works, the state's process is that we receive those applications by mid-June. We begin the interagency review process. It takes us until the fall. By November, we're announcing awards, and then we begin signing grant agreements. And it can be a year later before we're actually even approving reimbursements and then processing checks. So we can potentially expedite this process by having an intermediary partner, a community development finance-oriented partner who can review the submissions, make payments out the door much faster than we can. So what we're thinking is that we would actually award the funds to, and what we would propose, and what I want to get your reaction to today, is that we would actually make the award of the full amount of funds to MCIC and partner DHCD with MCIC to provide information submitted by the CDO entities to tell us this is what we accomplished this month, this is what we intend to accomplish next month, and to make adjustments, again, pay for performance. Those who have accomplished much in July can be entrusted with whatever they think they can achieve in August, and will adjust based, again, on performance. So the intent would be that MCIC plays this critical intermediary role, holds funds and awards funds on this basis. Now, I do want to note, we think that there is some staffing support need that will be required. And we have begun the conversation with philanthropy about this. So we have multiple philanthropic entities in Baltimore that are willing to provide some support for staffing. And we have also talked with Michael at a high level conceptual approach of how we might enable operating support to come from the funds, the capital funds that are awarded to support MCIC if philanthropic dollars were not an option. And I do think, philanthropic dollars could be our plan in the first, second, third year, and then we could transition to a pay for model that was built into the award process. So look, that's the concept. I think there's lots to discuss, but there's also an opportunity here to, I think, prepare MCIC for what's to come with a track record that will benefit us the next time we apply for new market tax credit allocation. I'm sure there's more, but I'm trying to do the Cliff's Notes version of this.
Yeah.
So, I'd love to hear your...
Yeah, I think this helpful. That was a lot of information. I do think it would be helpful, and I think I mentioned this to Michael. I can't remember if I mentioned it to you, Mr. Secretary, that it'd be helpful to have some sort of like graphic that showed sort of where the process of each thing and where it was going and where MCIC fits in. Just to, so it's, I think quite
I think
clear.
we'll have it. I think we'll have it by tomorrow. It's in process. We're working on it. I don't remember if you told me you needed it or not, but we're working on it for you. I mean, you're right. We need to graphically represent this complex thing in a clear fashion.
Yeah. And then like, does the money, one question I have about it, and we don't have to get into all this now, is like, does the money hit MCIC's bank account and MCIC holds it? And then, so would MCIC collect and keep any interest earned? Things like that too, I think would be helpful. As the comptroller, it's my job to think about things like that.
Yes, yes, it is. That's a great question. I mean, I would say that I don't know the answer to that. Right. I would ask you, is there a preferable answer to that? And if so, we should just quickly work. We've been working with OAG internally just to figure out how DHC, with or without MCIC, how we would do this. And so OAG is read into our process. Our AAGs are read into this process, so we can quickly ask that question. But do you have a preference?
I mean, I think to the extent that like we are looking for, like, this should benefit MCIC to some degree. So so it should, if we're holding the money and I mean, we're not doing this as a favor to DHCD, we're doing it as this is a sensible use of our resources. We're going to be, if we don't get the foundation dollars, we'll be charging, or seeking reimbursement for staff or whatever to do this. But it would, to me, it makes sense for MCIC to hold on to the interest as a benefit to it for doing this transaction. I doubt it won't be, I doubt it will be that much, because if the point is for us to get the money in and then get it out the door. The other question is where the Board of Public Works fits in, at what stage, as well, because usually all the Bernie grants come to the Board of Public Works, and I wouldn't want it to look like we were trying to circumvent the Board of Public Works. So we have to figure out, does MCIC come? Does it come with them? Are they sub-grantees? So that's another issue to think through as well.
That's a great point. So, yeah, so if it's debt funded,
Right.
if it's a geo bond, it's going to come to BPW, correct?
I think so.
And this is, so it originated in the budget as a general fund revenues, but it was moved to geo bond,
Okay.
which makes sense.
Okay.
So yes, I think it would come to BPW. Your question about what does that reporting look like? We'd want to make sure that we're, transparent and,
Right.
giving details about where the money was actually ending up.
Right. Okay.
What I will say, just, this may not be, germane, but I think it's worth noting is that typically these funds, they would go to pay for all kinds of activities that are not directly related to reducing the number of vacant buildings in the city. Now, conceptually, yes, but we end up putting millions of dollars in subsidy into LIHTC deals in the city every year. There's all sorts. My point is, there's all sorts of other activities that ultimately aren't really quickly resolving the vacant concentration and problem that we have. And that's, after all, what the vision was for these funds, and has been for this newest iteration, the 50 million a year. So we think there's a good opportunity to kind of be more on mission right now with these resources. There are trade-offs with everything, obviously. And then one last thing, and I don't want to get too far out front on this, but Comptroller, I think this is going to be important for you to know and for all of us to think about, is there's another conversation that GBC is leading right now, pulling together lending institutions for a critical phase of the work, which is the rehab. So to ultimately rehabilitate the buildings that can be saved, construction financing is the greatest barrier, and state dollars aren't the best tool for that. Or if it were, we play a much smaller role because the scale is much greater, and the banks want to be involved in that. They want to, there's banks and other investors that want to do construction financing. It's an opportunity to make some money. It's not a pure subsidy like demolition work or acquisition work or stabilization work is, where there's not really a direct return. There's an appraisal gap, et cetera. So, but pooling and holding that fund and managing that fund is another opportunity that exists. It's bigger dollars, but it's out there too. The only kind of alternative vision to MCIC doing that work would be if kind of multiple entities like NIF and Harbor Bank and Baltimore Community Lending and MCIC were all in that space, and that might be the safer way. Competitive environments, see who does a good job with deploying those resources. There are those are the two alternative visions out there, though. We're not there yet, but the banks are meeting with GBC in the coming days to have this discussion, and they're doing it on the basis of there seems to be general agreement from some of the larger banks that they're ready to put money into a fund for that activity.
Cool. That's interesting. Okay.
So just something else for us to think about.
Okay. That's great. Other questions for Secretary Day? Or comments? You guys are gonna make
Matt-
me be the only one with questions.
Madam Chair, can I ask a question?
Yeah, of course.
Or is it okay if there's not formal action on this until we further refine the idea? Okay.
Yeah, I think we should hold it until April. And I mean, what's your like, you can email us about your timeline too. We can chat about that to make sure that we make a formal decision when, within the time that it's needed.
Yeah.
And just recognizing that, yeah, I think it'd be good to get something in writing to everybody and spell out some of these issues and yep. And make
Absolutely.
sure there's
The only
agreement.
The only thing that needs to happen in between those two is we do have to announce the funding round, which we can do without publicly, disclosing or even without formally agreeing to this.
Yeah,
Will it be, I think, the most efficient way to move forward if MCIC is involved? I think so, but we can proceed without saying that and without deciding that. I will say that when we announce this round, we had envisioned, and this is all in the last like 24, 36 hours, but Brooke, we had envisioned you being a part of that announcement so that MCIC was, there and represented, but we don't have to say that yet.
okay. Oh yeah, I
mean,
think I got an email invitation to the
Okay,
thing
all right,
today, and I was
all
like, oh, this is nice. Oh, and this is what we're talking about. So yeah,
Yeah.
I would say, I think it probably makes sense for us to not announce a partnership or an involvement, but rather just to say, we're, excited
conversation.
to continue the conversation or not reference it at all, but we can come up with something. But yeah, I think it would be good for the AG, to make sure that the AGs have weighed in on everything, to make sure the reimbursement or payment model is approved, have questions answered around Board of Public Works, and then get it in writing so that the board knows what it's voting to take on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Michael, go ahead.
No, I was just 100% agree that there would have to be this board would have to take action to, adopt a resolution to either sign a grant agreement or take a loan agreement or whatever it would be, partnership MOU kind of relationship, all of which have been, pitched as potential mechanisms for doing this partnership in some form or another. And we've already had some initial conversations with Secretary Day's staff on the neighborhood revitalization side and even at the OAG. And then our outside counsel, which is QTAC Rock, as to what might be sort of reasonable mechanisms to do this. And frankly, different approaches have different pros and cons, I'm sure imagine. The key for me, or one of the keys for me, is that in order to be useful for new markets application purposes, provided that's one of our sort of obligations, is that the money has to count as our capital and it has to be at risk when we give it out. So, or disperse it in some way. So whatever it means for it to become our capital, is maybe it's a grant or it's a loan or something to us. And then it's a at-risk transaction from our balance sheet to the CDO or whomever the partner is on the other end. And whether that's at risk because we underwrote it like a loan and it's effectively subsidy, but it's written off as a loan, or if it's a grant in some way, we just have to sort of answer those two questions so that the money is moving through MCIC faster than it would go through DHCD, but still usefully to us so we can take credit for it, frankly, on a new markets application in the future. The larger idea of the construction financing and frankly, what kinds of instruments and tools this BVRI money might be, all of that is kind of, up in the air still. The notion that we would use it for the subsidy portion is, I think, the right one. And Secretary Day and you and I have spoken about this, but the actual sort of mechanism by which that money would move and then sort of the effectiveness on a balance sheet of that money for TBD, and how we would report it obviously to BPW and others would be critical to that.
Yep. It's great. Tracy, did you have something you wanted to add?
I did, but I think Michael answered my question. I'm good. Thank you, Comptroller.
Okay, sure. Great. Well, we'll look forward to receiving those materials. If you want to get them all to Michael and me, then Michael can disperse them to the board and take care of that. And yeah, I think it sounds like that's anything further on that for now.
No, thank
Okay.
you for your thank you for your openness and willingness to consider it, and look forward to getting you more materials, and we can have a further discussion once we've done that. But again, really appreciate the kind of open-mindedness on this.
Sure. Great. Okay. Any other comments? For the good of the order? Great. Okay. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn today's meeting.
Great. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. Great meeting. Good to see everybody. Thanks, Michael. Welcome, Crystal, and we'll see you all soon. Take care.
Yeah, everybody.
Bye-bye.
All right.
Everyone.
Take care. Bye-bye.
See y'all.
Bye.